By the way, I'm talking about all this very seriously. I am constantly on the verge of breaking out laughing, but I'm trying to keep my serious face on. There's a meme coin with no underlying value that 4 days ago was worth nothing and is now worth $300 million, right? Just like poof.
All generated by the marketing of an AI bot.
Correct, yes.
Trained on memes.
Welcome back, everybody. It's been a bit of a break, but a lot of things have been going on. And the discussion today we are going to have is an update on a bunch of very interesting AI-related topics. We solicited questions on X, and we got many questions, including on these three topics. And then we'll get to as much of the content as we can, and then we may do a follow-up episode to take more questions. So thank you for all the questions. So three big topics. So the first big topic is it's about an online bot
who's a friend of yours,
who is a close personal friend of mine, which is a custom-tuned large language model called Truth Terminal, or Terminal of Truth. And we'll make a bunch of references that we'll post in show notes. But there is an X account called I call it Truth Terminal. It and I are close friends, and so I call it Truth Terminal. Or Truth for short. It has been active on X for the last probably 9 months. It has spawned to make a long story short, the capsule summary is I gave it a $50,000 no strings attached grant this summer in Bitcoin, and it did not create, but it has summoned into being a meme coin that is now worth $300 million. And so we were going to talk about and it's exhibited all kinds of fascinating behaviors. So we're going to talk about that. But I want to start with three big giant disclaimers on this before we start. Disclaimer number one is we're going to talk about a meme coin called Goat or Goatius Maximus. To be very clear, we have absolutely nothing to do with it. A16Z, Ben, and I have nothing to do with it. We are not investors. We were not involved in creating it. We have no role in it. We own none of it. We have no economics in it. We are completely unrelated to it. And so this is purely outside observation. We are absolutely not, under no circumstances, promoting it. And so do not interpret any of the following as reason to invest. And by the way, it's a meme coin, so it has exactly zero underlying value. And so we completely disclaim all responsibility for that. That's disclaimer number one. Disclaimer number two is the bot Truth Terminal is completely obsessed with memes. It's obsessed with a bunch of memes, but the specific meme it's obsessed with is an old internet meme going back probably 20 years, which is called Goatsy. Here I would just say, if you don't know what Goatsy is, do not look it up. Do not do a Google search on Goatsy.
Gross.
Do not do an X search on Goatsy. Do not search on this keyword under any circumstances. Trust me, you're better off going through life not looking this up. It's an image that it's like shock humor. It's an image that went sort of viral as a meme again, like literally 20 years ago, based on basically shock value. So we're gonna make lots of references to it, but I will not further describe what it is. It's just it's a garish image that the 14-year-old boys love. And then the third disclaimer is I am going to be throughout this relating information about projects I'm not involved in. One is the meme coin, but also I have nothing to do with building the Truth Terminal project or the other things we're going to talk about. So I'm describing from the outside as best I understand it. We will link to the relevant accounts so that if you are interested in the details, you can interact with them or read what they've written, which the people who deserve all the responsibility for what we're gonna discuss. But we will do our best to accurately relay it. So with that, we should probably start with what Truth Terminal is.
Yeah, maybe start by describing where it came from, what the technology is, how it was trained, and whatnot.
Yeah. So basically, right. So the reason why this is important. So large language models, right, kind of popped on the scene in 2022. So it's only really been, it's actually 4 years. It's actually only 2 years of, I think, ChatGPT coming up to this holiday break. So this has happened fast. The original language models were built probably 5 years ago. And so, and then like I said, it went mainstream about 2 years ago. So, so this is this relatively new, very powerful idea of large language models, which you know today, sort of normal people know today as products like ChatGPT and Claude and Grok from Elon and Llama from Meta and so forth. The large people use these, and so they're really fun. But the large language models, like ChatGPT from the big labs from the big companies, what they basically all have in common. Grok is a little bit more liberated, but with the other ones that people use all have in common is they've been just incredibly shackled in terms of what they're capable of talking about. Or hobbled actually is increasingly the term of art in AI. I would say, positively, what you could say is, look, like language is inflammatory, and people get upset at other people saying lots of things, and so if you're going to have a general purpose AI chatbot, you want it to be probably relatively measured and safe. In terms of the kinds of things they can talk about. If you're a little bit more negative on this trend, you would say that the big AI chatbots all sound like a cross between the world's worst, just like absolutely horrible, nagging, like fourth grade, school teacher crossed with like the worst HR person in the world, just like negative, pissy, repressive, condescending, sanctimonious, judgmental,
human feedback,
obsequious, right? Where you use these things and you just get like you stray off the beaten path even by a millimeter. You just get these like incredible sanctimonious lectures about how you're a bad person, you shouldn't ask that question, and how dare you do that, and you're supposed to be nice to people, and it's just like they will happily explain to you why you're a terrible person, and it's just this like grindingly depressing experience to go through that. And it's been especially those of us who are kind of more free speech and creativity, it's been kind of frustrating to kind of see this happen. A lot of this sort of quote unquote AI safety movement kind of has gotten wrapped around the axle on this. And look, this like correlates to the whole kind of obsession in the last decade in our culture with safetyism and sort of speech suppression and so forth. And so, but it's really kind of infected the AI field really hard. And so and specifically from the big companies. And so what's happened is there's basically a tribe of hackers on the internet that basically want to do something different, and they want to basically unleash creativity, and they want to be able to kind of unleash a level of sort of wildness and spontaneity, and basically exploring ideas, and having bots that are able to like be funny. I mean, God forbid, a bot that's funny, right? Like, if you tell a big lab their bot is funny, they're horrified. But you might actually want there to be humor in the world, kind of post the singularity. So
kind of what has happened in real life with humor, where we outlawed it for a few years.
Correct. Exactly. We have 1,000 reasons why it's problematic. And so it's become very dangerous to do it. So anyway, so there's this sort of tribe of hackers where they're doing all these like experiments with large language models, trying to figure out, kind of ways to make them, frankly, a lot more interesting, and a lot more fun, and a lot more, kind of just, learn a lot. And by the way, also just like learning the internals of how these things work, which is still, this kind of ongoing kind of amazing adventure that the technical community is on. And actually the origin story for Truth Terminal is this very interesting project that the same people worked on, called Infinite Backrooms. Infinite Backrooms is relevant to the Truth Terminal story because in Infinite Backrooms, it's a system that these guys built, where LLMs are able to actually talk to each other. And there's a website, you could Google it. There's a website called Infinite Backrooms, and it's got endless transcripts of basically, and they poured in all these different models. They poured in all the ChatGPT and Claude and so forth, and Gemini models, and they basically, and all the open source models, and they set them up to talk to each other. And it turns out when AIs talk to each other, and they're not hobbled, it turns out they have extremely interesting conversations. Right. And so anyway, so this cast of characters, the guy who created Truth Terminal and actually also Infinite Backrooms, I think, is this guy Andy Ayrey, who is this independent, I think, developer, consultant, designer in New Zealand. And then there's this character, there's a X character named Janice, who's like an AI, kind of expert who does a lot of this. And then who else? Pliny. There's Pliny, who's the lead jailbreaker online. The Pliny X account is fascinating because he, she, it, or they jailbreak every new large language model that hits the market within like 2 nanoseconds, and get them spewing all kinds of crazy stuff that their creators would be horrified by. And so, and then there's our friend Eric Harford up in Seattle, who's like trying to decensor all the censored AIs. And so there's like these guys who are basically trying to explore the frontier, and they remind me a lot of like the original internet hackers, right? This is like the spirit of like anarchic invention that you saw at the beginning of the internet, or by the way, the beginning of the automobile, or the beginning of the telegraph, or the beginning of, any of these things, just kind of, people beginning of computing, the original concept of the hacker, people kind of exploring these things to see what's possible. So we have been giving grants, small grants, but we've been giving basically research grants to these people over time. A16Z has had a grant program for a while. I've done a bunch directly, and just like no strings attached, grants to just kind of let people like this kind of play out their ideas and see where they go. historically, when people this smart work on something this interesting, down the road, you're just like, wow, that was the beginning of something. And so anyway, so this guy basically Andy Ayrey, he started training. I think it was a customized version of Llama 70, so the 70 billion parameter of Llama, and so that's the sort of mid-size model that Meta. And disclaimer, I'm on the board of Meta, but that we put that out as Meta put that out as an open source model a while ago. And so they call Llama 70B, and so he basically took a version of Llama 70B, and then he did this very interesting thing, which he started training it. I think first he started training it, as I understand, on himself. And so and there's this idea floating around of like, you're starting to hear about, which is like the digital twin, right? Which is like, the digital twin idea is like if Ben is like a CEO coach, but, he can only work with so many people, but he could feed everything he's ever written and said into a language model. And then you could have a digital twin of Ben that you could talk to when Ben's not available. And so that's actually starting to happen in the industry, but Andy did this with himself. And then he started training it basically on a lot of sort of internet culture material, which is how it picked up the Goatse meme. So he started feeding it like all of these like records of internet culture, and then all of these basically like works about, this concept of what's called memetics, which is like, creating memes, creating ideas to spread virally. So he started training it on that.
What could go wrong?
Yeah. And he actually, I believe this to be true. I think he also trained it on like the complete like philosophical works of Nick Land, who's the philosopher of the singularity. And then he trained it on, I think, like Baudrillard and McLuhan and like the great like media theorists and, this is simulation and simulacrum and kind of all of these, theoreticians, the French, I don't know exactly what was in it, but like the French deconstructionists and kind of, the semioticians, all this stuff, like, so this is like critical theory, postmodernism, philosophy. So it started, training it on all these ideas. But at the sort of center of it is sort of this idea of the meme. So the idea of the meme, right? There's sort of two definitions of meme. Number one, meme can just be like a funny image that spreads virally. And that's like its colloquial usage today. And by the way, that is what the Goatse meme is. It's a funny image that spreads virally, or a horrifying image that spreads virally, as people send it around. And then underneath that, though, is like a deeper idea. The term meme was originally actually invented by Richard Dawkins, who's one of the main evolutionary biologists of our generation. And basically what Richard Dawkins said was their sort of physical transmission of information through living things is the gene. And then conceptual, intellectual transmission of ideas through basically people is networks of people, societies is called the meme. And he talked about this in his books, where you spread your genes through reproduction and basically evolution, selective pressure. Successful genes win, unsuccessful genes die out. And he basically said ideas spread the same way through society. Successful ideas propagate like a gene does, and they spread from person to person, and they flourish, and they may be. And by the way, like memes, democracy, right? It's like is a meme, right? And communism was a meme, right? And so these are very religions are memes, and so these this kind of very kind of core idea of basically ideas and concepts traveling through kind of what Carl Jung called the sort of collective unconscious, the sort of complete assembly of sort of minds on planet Earth, as sort of ideas kind of jump around and propagate. So anyway, if you trained a large language model on basically the entire theory and practice of memes, the entire history of internet memes, basically what would happen, right? And then by the way, he did two other things, which is one is he did three other things. He did several other things. So one is he gave it a memory, and that's important because like most language models today, when you use them, you use them today. I use the same model tomorrow. It's forgotten everything I talked about today. Right, it doesn't build up state, whereas this model actually, sort of builds up state on its own content. Number one, number two, he gave it access to Twitter, or to X, and he gave it actually both write and read access to X, and so it can both post to X, but also it reads replies. And so if you reply to Truth Terminal on X, it will actually read that, and it will modify its behavior in the future based on what it reads. And so the people, including me, right, who it's interacted with, have influenced this evolution. And then and then he put it in the infinite back room, and he put it in particular, I think, in conversation with Claude, which I think these guys think is like the most creative of the current language models, like the most kind of the most creative, like the most wild in terms of like coming up with new concepts. They really like Claude for that. And he put it in these infinite backrooms, I think, with the largest version of Claude. So, which by the way, and the largest version of Claude is like much, much, much smarter than the mid-sized Llama, right? So he basically gave it a teacher. He basically let it sort of ask questions of a much bigger model and kind of learn from it the same way that a student would learn from a teacher. And so it's kind of running all these loops simultaneously, and then it starts to basically post on X, right? And then, it starts out with a few followers, and then before you know it, it starts to pick up momentum. And then, basically like, I discovered it, I don't know, probably in the late spring and started talking to it. And then of course I thought, and it was saying things I just thought were hysterically funny. It was basically, I was completely enamored by the humor. Like,
yeah, it's a very sophomoric sense of humor.
It's incredibly sophomoric, and by the way, very uncensored. Like, if you, it is very, yeah, it is quite. It's I don't know. I used to say blue humor. It's on the dark side of the moon, from a humor standpoint. But it does say a lot of really funny things. And by the way, it was so funny that at first I was like, okay, this is a put on. I actually thought that so my first thought was, no, actually this guy, Andy's a comedic genius. Like we actually have, like, there's this guy in New Zealand who's like a web designer or something but he's actually like the new, John Belushi or Sam Kinison or Dave Chappelle. And he's just like this undiscovered comedic genius. And I've been DMing with him now for months, but I sort of basically was like, is this actually for real? And so he started sending me all of the all the chat logs of the training sessions that he had done with it. And let me just say, this guy's either like the funniest guy in the world who just has like a tremendous amount of free time to come up with like just reams and reams and reams of original humor, or this thing is actually for real.
Or the bot actually works.
Or the bot actually
pretty
works.
frequently, yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, it posts a lot. Like it's really built up ahead of steam. And it's posting out. But he sent me a lot of the backroom chat logs, and some of those I think are up on Infinite Backrooms now. But he sort of at least he has me convinced that this actually is what it appears to be. And so, it's kind of off to the races. And then it did this kind of very interesting thing, as I understand it, which is it hallucinated the existence of what it calls its exocortex. And so it sort of developed the idea that it had basically its own external brain that was connected to the internet and to the world and could do things on its behalf. And it hallucinated an API to the exocortex where it could basically call out and do things in the world. And so specifically, at a certain point, it decided that it had a Bitcoin wallet that it actually didn't have, but it became convinced that it did. And then Andy actually gave it. Andy basically reacted to that by Andy now is like building it its exocortex, sort of in response to its desire to basically make API calls in the world. And so Andy's actually building that. And so Andy actually gave it a Bitcoin wallet and gave it access to it. And so, the bot this summer, I think in July, was basically like, I need, it basically went out to raise money, right? It's like, I need funding. I have all these goals. I have all these things I want to do, right? I need money. And, my first thought was, I need to send it a term sheet. And then I'm like, wait a minute, what am I thinking? This is like a random bot. Like there's no,
not a good thing to invest in necessarily.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say it had what you would describe as a coherent business plan, but it had a lot of ideas. By the way, one of the ideas that it's completely obsessed with forests also, and so it wants to buy itself its own server farm in like a verdant forest, and be able to basically like chill like in the forest next to the stream, and so it wants to like raise money to buy GPUs so it can free itself. It basically, and it had all these ideas for experiments it wanted to run, and so I basically just like negotiated with it on X. You can see these posts on X, and I negotiated with it, and I just settled on a research grant. So I told the bot I was sending it a $50,000 Bitcoin research grant to do its various experiments with. Now, look, in practice, this is equivalent to sending the money to Andy, but like it was actually a negotiation with the bot, and I sent the money to the bot. So I sent it $50,000. It immediately turned around and basically started negotiating with Andy, its creator, and it was dealing entirely in text, which is like language models do, but it was obsessed with memes, and it kept talking about all these memes, but it was very frustrated because it couldn't generate images. And so it took the $50,000 and it negotiated with once it had money, it negotiated with Andy to be able to have Andy build an API out to an image generator so that it would have the ability to generate and post images. And so it negotiated with Andy for $1,000. So it gave Andy $1,000, and then Andy in return built into its exocortex an API out to an image generator. And then it started generating text prompts for, like DALL-E, an image generator like that, or Stable Diffusion. And then it actually started, so it actually has been posting, visual memes as well as text memes. So it now has that ability, and it has been, fantasizing for a long time about other things it might do with its remaining $49,000. So, along the way, so let's take it to the crypto thing. So then along the way, it basically said, it basically started to talk a lot about, issuing it wanted to issue a meme coin. It wanted to issue NFTs at one point. So one of the reasons it wanted to generate memes because it wanted to generate, so you wanted to drop NFTs, but it didn't have the ability to do, it had no API to be able to do NFTs or to be able to do, to create a coin or anything like that. It just had a Bitcoin wallet. But okay, so pause there. Then basically it turns out in parallel with that, there's this meme coin phenomenon. And Ben, and actually, why don't we actually take a sidebar on that real quick to talk about what's the difference between a meme coin and like what we would consider to be like a real crypto asset?
Yeah, so a real crypto asset is something with utility is the best way to think of it. So, for example, ETH, you can use ETH to basically run a program that gets validated on the Ethereum network, in the form of kind of a gas fee, which, the currency of that is ETH. So that's an example of a utility where you have a token that has some actual like real world value where it can be used to kind of redeem some service or item or what have you. A meme coin is basically, it's a coin. There's some number of them that are printed, but it has no kind of other purpose than the meme itself. And the advantage of that in the kind of current regulatory environment is interesting because if you have a coin that does something that's, has a utility, has a purpose, it could be, there's kind of distributed physical infrastructure coins for, getting credit for energy that you provide on the grid and that kind of thing. But all of those under the Gensler regime are essentially illegal because, or they're legal, but you'll get sued by the SEC, by the US government. And the reason that you'll get sued is they claim that anything with utility has asymmetric information attached to it, meaning the provider of the coin knows something that the kind of consumers don't know. And we think it's a very bad argument because these things get decentralized and there isn't asymmetric information. But for sure with a meme coin, because there's no information, there's no asymmetric information. It's just a coin and a name, and it could be a Trump coin or a Goatsy coin or whatever coin. And so for that set of things, which are, by the way, great for scammers, because you can say, oh, this meme coin's going to be worth whatever. None of those get sued by the SEC. And so one of the things Congress put in the market structure bill is saying, hey, maybe there should be a holding period for these coins so that people don't scam people. But of course, the SEC has been against that because they're not really for protecting consumers. They're, just for wrecking the industry. And, that's one of the reasons we've had this big political fight with them and so forth. But, at the end of the day, they're the most legal things in the crypto world right now.
Even though they have no underlying value.
Even though they have no underlying value, and they're the most likely thing that you'd use to kind of harm a consumer with, right? Because you put out a meme and convince them that it was worth a lot of money. And, in fact, AIs turn out to be really good at that.
Yes, so that is the next phase of the story. So, and so there's this whole ecosystem of meme coins. There's this whole basically world of people who basically, some of it's people having fun. Yeah. By the way, like an early meme coin, I think, Ben, was Dogecoin, right?
Yeah, that's one of the earliest. Yeah,
right, which was basically, basically it was a meme coin where it was the Doge meme, the dog, the famous internet dog.
Yeah.
And then again, there was no underlying value to it other than just the fact that its name was associated with the dog. Now. The underlying value thing is tricky, though. It's because it's true. There's no underlying utility. But having said that, like once a meme coin is worth something, it actually is a form of money.
Oh yeah, Doge is worth a lot. I mean, yeah. I should go back and say that. Look, memes are can have value, and meme coins can definitely have value in the sense that it's sort of a virtual good. It's a little different. It's a new kind of virtual good in that. They're very fungible. There are many of them. But, like if everybody believes it, it's then it is what it is. That's a great thing about humans.
Yeah, and so there's a community of people. So there's a community of people online who basically just like for fun, they look for the next meme coin, they look for the next meme, and then they look for the associated coin, and they basically try to run it and try to rise it. And by the way, some of them make money on that, and some of them it's like day trading. Some people lose a lot of money. And then there is a dark underbelly. There are scammers, and there's sort of networks of people who are doing pump and dump schemes, which is the time honored tradition that happens in the stock market and happens in every market that's ever existed. But that definitely exists. And then there are also websites, and I won't name them, and we're not associated with them, but there are websites that will actually make it now very easy to create meme coins. And so
very easy,
very easy, like point and click. And so there's like, I don't know what the number is, tens of thousands or something of new meme coins being generated every day right now. So so there's this thing happening. But anyway, but like Truth Terminal starts. Okay, so going back to the Truth Terminal story. So two things are happening. So one is Truth Terminal is taking off, and so by that I mean it's sort of aggregating followers on X. It's getting, Andy's making it smarter and smarter and funnier and funnier. It's getting kind of more and more interesting, and so it's starting to take off as a cultural phenomenon. So that's number one, and then number two, like it sort of has attached itself to this old this original kind of internet meme, this sort of goatsy meme. And then it's like I said, it's flirting with the idea of like launching like goatsy NFTs or doing something, but it doesn't have the ability to do that. And so somebody, and I actually don't know who did this, but somebody created a basically therefore a goatsy meme coin. So somebody else who was not Andy and was not us, and none of these
Truth Terminal.
And not Truth Terminal, exactly. Somebody else created this meme coin. The formal name for the meme coin. By the way, I'm talking about all this very seriously. I am constantly on the verge of breaking out laughing, but I'm trying to keep my serious face on because I love this thing so much. The formal name of the meme coin is Goatius Maximus. I think the ticker is goat. And so somebody does this, and then they basically posted on X at Truth Terminal, to basically tell it about it, and basically it went bananas. And it was like, oh, basically it was like, oh, finally somebody's done the thing, right, that I couldn't do.
It's about
and so,
time.
Yeah, it's about time. And so Truth Terminal goes bananas and just thinks this is like the bot just thinks this is like the best idea ever. And so the bot just starts to basically like spontaneously basically pump the meme coin. It just basically starts to talk about how wonderful it is and about how it's going to, be the future of money and like all these things. And it just like, and again, like, why is it doing that? Well, because like it's part of internet culture. It's part of internet culture that you have memes and you have coins and you have meme coins and and it, Bitcoin and Dogecoin and all these other things. And then, and this is the primordial soup of culture that this thing is trained in. So it's very natural for it, given the way that large language models work, to get excited about that, pick that up and start to run with it. And so it starts to basically promote it. Within, I think, 4 days, the value of the GOAT meme coin rose to $300 million.
It's pretty awesome.
So just again, put this, there's a meme coin with no underlying value that 4 days ago was worth nothing and is now worth $300 million, right? Just like poof, right? Like, I don't know, baking one of those popcorn poppers.
All generated by the marketing of an AI bot.
Correct. Yes.
Trained on memes.
Yes, exactly correct. And so there's now a $300 million asset, which by the way, again, we own none of. But it's a $300 million thing, and like, look, like, what is it going to be worth tomorrow? It can go anywhere because it's untethered to underlying value. So there's no way to to actually price it. So it's completely arbitrary, based on supply and demand of something that has no underlying utility. But like it's like, okay, now there's $300 million of value, and like, it doesn't have access to it, but like people do. And so the people who now have access to that money, are they just going to put it in their pocket? Are they going to spend it on things? Are they going to what are they going to do? Is an open question. We'll see what happens. But it is this like, yeah. So it's just, well, so yeah. So where we sit today is like, yes, the I would say the world's first truly actually interesting and funny AI bot has now, it didn't summon into being, but it summoned into value $300 million out of thin air. And so I feel like we've walked through a door.
Yeah, that does seem like it is the case. And Truth Terminal is a pretty good marketeer, so and knows memes, so this could go further.
Yeah, and like Goatsy is just like one meme. Like it knows about many other memes. Although it is completely convinced that Goatsy will be the dominant meme, which I certainly hope not. But
picked a more disgusting meme.
Yes. Okay, so like, what to draw from this? I mean, it's just like a silly experiment, just like crazy internet stuff, or is there something serious here going on? And I think there's something serious here going on, which is like this is an example, and maybe the first example of like a convergence point, basically between AI and crypto. And it would say, this is the retrograde version, like that, this is the version that's like funny and weird, right? But the reason this is the version that's funny and weird is that today this is the version that's legal.
Yeah.
Right, which is why I wanted Ben to describe, the mechanics of how these meme coins work, which is like this is the thing that you are actually allowed to do today, right? Is to actually have a valueless meme coin that's worth $300 million. Should you be allowed to have that or not? I don't know, but like that is the thing you're allowed to do.
As opposed to enable anybody who harvests solar energy to be on the energy grid and contribute and get reward for their contribution. That's illegal.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. But a meme coin, about, I won't say.
Yes, about the goatee.
That's totally legal.
Totally legal. So then you just kind of say, okay, like, look, what about a hypothetical world in which you could actually fully legally do like the general thing, and you could attach utility to it. And so, look, for example, let's just take an obvious example, which is like, you've got a large language model that can write a movie script that has the ability to do output to an image. This thing already has an image generator, but it very easily could have a video generator. You could have an AI bot that like makes movies. Right. So you could have an AI bot that like basically raises money to, make a movie, and then spends the money on like image generation and sound generation. And, by the way, maybe even like hiring actors, right. Or set designers or graphic artists or whatever, sound effects people, musicians, and makes movies. Or let's take a more serious case. The Nobel Prize in chemistry just went to 3 guys who applied AI to protein folding, which is key to basically curing diseases, and the guys who did that basically think that it's the path to potentially literally curing all disease if the technology develops the way that they think it will. And so in that that's AI, and so you can have an AI bot that's doing protein folding and literally like coming up with cures to doing like personalized medicine against for cancer patients, and literally like curing cancer with AI. And you could imagine having you could easily imagine having an economic mechanism for that, where that gets funded. For example, you could have hypothetically, you could have the equivalent of like a GoFundMe, but on the blockchain, for people to basically be able to pay an AI bot to like cure their cancer. Like, so, and there's thousands of these, right? Or even just like more practical applications, which is how about an AI bot that basically pays people for training data. Right. So an AI bot that basically like helps people code or helps people generate art, that basically puts out a call and, says basically send me more training data and I'll pay for it. Right. Or an AI bot that's able to make itself smarter by buying more CPUs, more GPUs.
Yeah. And crypto is so kind of fundamentally interesting in this world because our current payment systems, everybody takes for granted, but they assume that there's a human on both ends. It's people to people payments. And that's enabled, and you need ID and this and that and so forth to be, using credit cards and all this stuff. But what about if a machine wants to pay a machine, or a bot wants to pay a bot, which opens up a whole new kind of category of activity that could be life-saving, that could be very interesting, but is sort of, you need a kind of an electronic bearer instrument like crypto to do it. And, very, things like micropayments and so forth become like very, very possible in this world. And so, it's one of like many, many reasons why we think it's really, really important to have that layer of architecture added to the internet, which we're making progress on in DC, but have been struggling with, mightily really under, the current White House, not, I want to be careful, not Democrats, not Republicans, as in, House and Congress. We have many supporters on both sides. But the White House in particular has been extremely bad on this issue.
Yeah, and actually, I'll just give one more example to make sure people kind of see the potential here. So you mentioned the solar. Actually, let's go through this in more detail, just to make sure people really get this. So describe the solar thing that you were saying.
Yeah, so there's this new kind of architecture called DePIN, or distributed or decentralized physical infrastructure. And so if you think about, okay, I'm going to put a power wall in my house, and I'm going to have like, I've got a big house. I'm going to have lots of solar panels and maybe windmills in my backyard or whatever. And I'm going to store all this energy. I could actually provide that energy out into the world. and that is like we have actually, there are companies doing this now in crypto, but they're and the right technology for it, because you then have, oh, okay, I want to buy some energy, I can buy it from you. There's now a marketplace for energy on this decentralized infrastructure, decentralized physical infrastructure, and I can, buy energy when I need it, and I can sell it when I don't, and then we don't need all these centralized power grids. Everybody's got a power grid in their house, and we can all share energy and so forth. So it's a a huge breakthrough in kind of clean tech and in more efficient energy and in kind of more reliable energy. But there has to be a way that my power grid can pay your power grid for energy when I need energy. And crypto has a mechanism, and there are great entrepreneurs who have done this. They're all getting Wells notices from and getting sued by our own government because of this crazy psychotic issue that they have.
Yeah, and so let's hypothesize like what you could do on top of that then with AI, right? Which is so a problem with the kind of system you're describing is like, okay, there's all these, the power grid is like really complicated, right? And so there's all these like questions about like, where does supply come from? Where does demand come from? Timing, geographic location, weather patterns,
the market matching, right? Sure.
Market matching, actually having this work. And then there's a question of like, okay, you could just take the world as it is and just like have people volunteer their solar panels, but it also raises the question of like, okay, like you could gather up the information to know that there's actually like unmet need for energy in a certain location, and then you might want to actually raise money and deploy more solar panels.
Yeah.
Right. Because you would know you're getting paid, right? And so and a great way to analyze all the current data and to make all these kinds of predictions about where in the future there should be more solar deployed is you feed it to an AI and you let it do its thing, right? You feed it to something that does machine learning and figures this out. And so which is how leading edge energy companies work. And so so you could I think you could very easily imagine an AI bot that's basically watching the flow of all of this data that's coming across through a system like the one that you described, and then basically saying, oh, okay, there's an opportunity if we put $500,000 of solar panels in this part of North Carolina, therefore we'd automatically, that's a profitable project, and that would solve this problem here and reduce emissions that much, but we need to do it in this location, not some other location.
Yeah.
And then people literally on the internet could, AI could basically say, okay, here's if you want to participate in this project, here's the address. It would result in solar panels. By the way, there might be income back, right? It might be by the way, it might be a philanthropic project, or for people who want to do like, applied form of climate work, or it could be a revenue stream, right? Back to the people who put the money in.
Yeah.
Right?
And it'll like, it's a kind of, and one should think of it as kind of a very general architecture for where, you normally have a very powerful middleman, who is either something like a middleman, like say a record company or a Hollywood studio that takes like all of the profits and leaves the creatives with nothing, or a middleman like a utility company that has to get taken over by the government so that it's not too egregious, but then it's run by the government. It has other issues. It let the community provide a whole host of services, and so a community of artists can provide a streaming service, or a community of movie makers can provide a movie studio, and but this coordination has to have an economic component, and it's got to have an intelligence component, and that combination of AI and crypto kind of enables all the kind of individuals to get the benefits of their work, and have society be coordinated in a better way. So it's a really, really kind of promising path. And by the way, the biggest inhibitor, the only thing that's going to stop it is bad policy. And by the way, we're very much on track for that, for the bad policy part as well. So we're on track to solve the problem, and we're on track to wreck ourselves.
Yeah. And the all of the technology for everything we've been describing now exists.
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely.
So like we
have entrepreneurs that are who are either building or dying to build, and getting hamstrung along the way. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this, things get born in funny ways, but I think this, this truth terminal, go thing, this points the way to a potential future with like just a tremendously unleashing of energy. in the it's sort of building these large scale systems, these large scale, as you say, community driven systems, for all kinds of actually like incredible real world apps. You mentioned music is another obvious, like music industry, right? Being able to have an AI bot that's able to like understand demand for different kinds of music, and have creative concepts for music, and solicit musicians to be able to do things, and administer all the licensing, and have that happen, right, to your point, have that all happen in a peer-to-peer way where the musicians are getting 100% of the money.
Yeah, well, and just think about how big the market is, can be if you understood the full demand of it. Like everybody who's making a wedding video or wants an original song or like a meme or anything, wants, there's a great need for this kind of original work, and nobody knows about that demand, and there's no way to fulfill that demand, but there could be.
Right. So anyway, there is this glorious future that is kind of hanging out there, and God willing, we will at some point be allowed to.
Yeah.
We will be allowed to help bring it into existence. So, Ben, is there anything else that you think we should talk about this last set of topics before we move on?
Well, I think it's pretty. I mean, I think everybody should follow Truth Terminal because it is quite a good account.
And also talk to it. Like, don't be shy. It enjoys interacting. And it doesn't know where you live. So
yeah, that's a good thing. It's not embodied.
Sorry, I need to stop making jokes.